If you feel a need to change the world by your presence, your company, your business, and you believe in the humanness of our world, and you also agree that the world is full of toxic distractions and overwhelming, superficial complications, I can show you how to dominate, how to win, and how to grow.
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode here, the Jerry Brazy Podcast. We have got a guest today. Paul MacFarlane is with us, and I will let him introduce himself. Paul's primary interests appear, let's try this again. Paul's deals are business, brand strategies, and ideas that change the world for the better. So having screwed up that introduction, Paul, tell us about yourself.
It's okay, because this is December 2nd, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. What came in your inbox today?
Right.
Right. So that's not what I do. In other words, it's interesting. I'm a visionary with a heart. Here's what I mean by this. If you look at this world and all the ease and the convenience of our digital life, we've paid a price for that. It's called our attention. Oh, hang on. I'm going to check Facebook. Check my list. Now, I'm on 14 different platforms with people. It's really a world that feels just overwhelmed and exhausted and oversaturated. We're almost at our peak digital experience. And when I talk to a business or a brand, say, look, this is the world we're in. You're fighting for trying to figure out how to reach people. Well, I show them a space in the future no one else is in, that is based on a simple, deep, truly human experience. I connect that with the truth of their organization, their people, and I create breathtakingly audacious, beautiful, simple work out there that makes them go wherever they want to go.
Wow. The oversaturation, I could not agree more. I think the smartphone in particular has probably been, while one of the greatest achievements, also one of the worst achievements, because over the weekend, I have 3 kids, and I'm sitting, when we go out to dinner, my kids are 22, 20, and 18, but still there's no phones at the table. But because we have that rule, you notice around all of the other tables how many people are sitting there not talking, looking at their phones while they're eating, couples sitting across from each other, not having a conversation, looking at their phones, and just that constant need for, I don't know what it is, attention that they're getting. They're checking in to see what everybody else is doing. It's almost an addiction, like that you can't sit down for 10 minutes and not look at your phone. And to further that point, I know I catch myself whenever if I'm waiting in line at the grocery store and I've got 5 seconds, I'm grabbing my phone and looking at it, right? You just check your email real quick, slide it back in your pocket. So I agree. I don't know exactly what the answer is. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, but that, we seem to be so inundated, and it's almost, it seems like we're addicted to it. How do we fix that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can't pretend that it isn't happening. We have to acknowledge what is. For instance, school children, elementary school kids around the world are asked questions on a regular basis about what their biggest concerns or dreams or fears are. The number one fear of school kids is still not doing well in school because it has ripple effects at home and everywhere else. That's obvious. But the number 2 fear is feeling disconnected. So again, it's the price we pay. Every single solution I give to any client or business has some sort of other negative effect somewhere. You have to look, and that's the price we paid. Now, let's play a little game. It's not a game. It's a question and answer, but I'll turn it into a game. Jay, I want you to think of the most powerful and famous and well-known and successful brands in the world. Name a few.
Nike, Coke, Pepsi. The list goes on. Yeah.
Okay, but you know what? If you really worked at that and you came up with 5, even up to 10, I promise you, almost all of them, if not all of them, are publicly famous. Now, let me explain what that is. You see, in the world, everything's about the personal marketing, and we use technology and data to reach people at the right time in the right place when they're thinking of buying. It's like we used to do the game as 2 people with 2 devices, and both of us look for something on Google, and then we jump to Facebook and see who has that product in their Facebook feed the soonest. There's that whole thing for the last 25 years, really, of the digital experience where the way you succeed as a business is just go and saturate people, and eventually something will be done. And the people who sell it say, oh, we can technically reach people, when they're thinking about this in the morning or this at this part of the customer experience. That's private marketing, personal, private, in my own little digital sphere marketing. Every brand you named, and if you named a few more, are publicly famous. You can't become famous with private advertising. I will point out some examples that are different. You could argue that Airbnb, Uber, maybe even Tesla used a digital world to spread its message. And then there's some that are still doing it well. But the biggest ones are publicly famous. And that's what you really have to be. Everyone's trying to get famous.
And the public famous, define public famous for me.
Nike, McDonald's, Microsoft, Toyota, Apple,
Yes.
Coke, Pepsi. They do things with public advertising. And they do things to everybody. They say, this is who we are. In fact, here's, I'll give us an example too. A lighthouse. Think of a lighthouse. Does the lighthouse go out into the ocean and find boats and say, hello, boat? We understand the trials and tribulations of being a boat in the dark ocean, which is why we've created a lighthouse. Click here. No. A lighthouse finds highest point on the rocky shore, builds a tall tower, and puts out a bright effing light. And says, safety, come here.
Right.
To be a lighthouse means you have to, often you need the money to do it, or you need to do something like a really good stunt that everyone will notice. Because sometimes it just takes a simple idea that's audacious. But to be a lighthouse means that you know who you are and you shine that bright light that attracts.
Yeah. Personalized
marketing is saying, we are not worthy of attraction on our own, so we have to just bother you more.
So the difference being on a public, the definition of a public company would be one that advertises to everybody versus, say, a small business that sells widgets that advertises or tries to target advertise to the widget buyer.
Well, yeah, but see, now you're just coming across the streams there. In other words, I don't drink Pepsi or Coke, but everybody does, whether you're at work or you're at home. But widgets sounds like something a business needs. Now, business-to-business advertising is a little different, a little different sphere, but you can still use the same techniques. In other words, like, what was it the other day? Small Business Day? And someone asked me, what do I do in small business? Small business. I take small businesses and make them into big, beautiful businesses. So it doesn't really matter whether you're a business to business or a small entrepreneur. You have to think that. In other words, I don't know if you know this, but Facebook. We just scroll on Facebook, and increasingly LinkedIn, you see shots of people like I am from the sternum up, talking and selling something. There's another one. Oh, there's another one. There's another one. Like my page, join my group,
Right.
And even if you're a small person, you have to really think, okay, all right, I want to tell the world about myself. What are the conventions? What are people expecting to see? And potentially start off by doing the exact opposite.
The exact opposite. So explain that.
All right. Did you get any retail offers in your email this morning?
Sure, of course. Yeah, everybody does. Right.
Name one.
Jiffy Lube.
Jiffy Lube. All right. Do you need your oil change today?
I actually do, as a matter of fact. And I'm going to get 20% off when I go do it.
All right. See, that is the kind of marketing where, like a plumber or something like that, where they just have to advertise all the time. And at some point, you'll either say, I've seen you so often that when I need you, I'll remember you and buy you. Or someone who's seeing that message today is going to need you.
Right.
But so let me give you another example. Billboards. Billboards are one of the old kind of media that are still out there. And the problem most modern people have with, say, billboards is that when you drive past it, there's nothing to do. You don't click on a billboard. You don't share a billboard. You don't like a billboard. You just see it and you go past it. And if it's a great billboard, you think about it and you see it the next day and the next day and you smile, or you finally get the joke or whatever, or you tell your friends about it. It can't be kind of put on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
What does it do? It makes an impression in a big public sort of space. It goes inside and creates light. That's the way things used to be. We're still that way. See, famous means a certain amount of visibility and also meaning to me. If I see a Nike commercial, and Nike, as big as they are, have you ever seen a commercial for Nike where they sold shoes?
Not specifically, no. It's good. Yeah.
No.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the people are wearing their shoes and wearing their outfits, but yeah, not like a home shopping channel where they're hawking fake jewelry or something.
No. In fact, I would argue that there is no brand as awesome as Nike, and I can tell you the secret of what makes them awesome. When they were beginning in the early 1970s, even before they had the wonderful, fantastic agency of Wieden and Kennedy, they did an ad in like a Runner's World magazine. When there were magazines that runners looked at to hear stories about running and see ads of the latest shoes. It might have been a Nike employee. I don't know the first one. It was a guy running on a path along the water, and sunrise or sunset, you know which it is. Probably shot by an employee. And the headline said, "There is no finish line." There is no finish line. And you had this little body text that said, when you're just trying to make the best running shoes, there's no finish line. There's constant improvement. There is no finish line. There's actually an ethos that is alive and has never dimmed inside of Nike since that time. Because it's one of the basic 7 human stories, a quest. Think, Jerry, what is a quest? Quest means, let's see how athletic I can become, how athletic the human race can become. Let's celebrate athletes and athleticism. Let's just compare that with a journey in return. I go and stay at Airbnb in Madrid. I come back, I'm changed. I take my kids to Disney World, come back, they're changed. A quest has no finish line. And Nike has had that simple truth, that simple quest energy going through every single thing they do. You see the spirit of athleticism and the quest to try and become faster, stronger, better, more of a winner in every decade.
Does that apply to being happy? And I ask the question in this context. Think about a beer ad or even a Coke ad, since we used Coke. Sometimes you get the Coke ad where they're selling you Coke and they show the bottle, it's freezing cold and it's got water dripping off of it, or they're filling up a glass full of ice cubes and it's making the little fizz noise and all of that. And then other times, there's a backyard party and a bunch of really good looking people are sitting there laughing back and forth and having a good time. And the product is being passed around and drank, but it's almost secondary to what the ad is, which is this is how to be happy, as opposed to delivering, here, drink this. Is that right along the same lines?
Well, I can take 2 lines and I can look at them like this. I can look at them like this, and I can look at them like this. here you're talking about what you said, basic human happiness. We have bodies we can see. We like to see beautiful things. We have skin. We like to feel a beautiful touch. We have all of our senses that we are trying to find happiness through our senses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of what gives us a brain and a developed spinal cord is that we are also social animals. And so it's very deft and manipulative sometimes when certain brands prey on our need to be accepted by our tribe. Why is it you never see a beer commercial with a guy just this beer?
Yeah.
You cannot do that. Most brewers will not even allow that. Do you know why? What is a guy drinking alone?
Yeah, right. He's an
He's a
alcoholic.
loser. He's
Yeah.
unhappy.
He's right. Exactly right.
At the same time,
I'm thinking about one sitting at a bar, just by himself. Nobody around him sitting, his chair's open on either side of him all by himself. You're like, that's a loser.
He's George Bailey before he commits suicide.
Yeah, right.
Right. So those are strong myths in our life. But see, this is fun. You don't show a person drinking alone, not even a woman, but you will never see a man in a commercial for chocolate just enjoying candy or chocolate by himself. Only a woman. You only see a woman really enjoying washing her hair.
Yeah.
Because sensuality is apparently just the domain of women. See, so that they appear sensual creatures to be attractive to men who are apparently not as much. So that happiness thing is true. We want to express and feel happiness through our senses, right? But at the same time, the basic human questions, and these are the things I talk to clients about all the time, basic human questions. Where did I come from? What is this? Why am I really here? What's the meaning of this? Where are we going? Where am I going? Those are basic human questions. Problem is they take long, meditative thought. And it's much faster to just get a distraction, a sensory distraction away from those fundamental issues.
Yeah.
Love. Everyone wants love, but no brand seems to know how to talk about it. And I'm sorry, McDonald's and Subaru did not do it correctly. That's why I said in my intro, I take basic, simple human truths and plumb them. And when you get something that's deep but simple and you own it, you can do it for years. Because it's always true.
So if you were to describe then what you do to help your clients specifically, is it how to get that message through digitally? Is it a change in the brand and the way that the brand looks and the way that the brand acts? Is it outreach in the communities? Is it traditional advertising? What, give me an idea. If you're selling me, what is it that you're selling?
Easy. When I meet people, I usually say I've got 3 stories I can tell you. I can tell you how I wrote and presented a peace plan for Afghanistan. I presented it to world leaders. Unfortunately, they didn't buy it. I hung out with the members of Led Zeppelin in their homes. And the story I'll tell you to answer that question directly is how I made an entire city fall in love with a used car lot. I was living in Aspen, Colorado in the winter of 2010. I was walking on a Sunday afternoon down Smuggler Mountain in late winter when it was a little slushy on the slope with my girlfriend at the time, and the phone rang and said, is this Paul? And I saw your company website, and I was wondering if you came up with some ideas for our business. Oklahoma. And my girlfriend said, I know what you got to do. So I went ahead into town. By the time I got into town, I had almost every idea that eventually was done. But let's back up. This business was a used car lot called Guaranteed Auto Credit. It's like, I'm sorry, sir, but your SEO strategy is showing. And he said, well, what can we do? So I said, well, here's what we did. How many employees do you have? And he said, about 70. 70? That's not. So I went to OKC and I met with these people and I asked them questions like, who are you? Most people had a lot of difficulty with that question. I promise you, Jerry, is that they would say, well, I'm head of customer service. No, I said, who are you? I'm a wife and a mother of, who are you? And eventually, oh, yeah. And then I got asked a chance to ask them questions about their deepest desires in life. I asked my favorite question in the world is, if you knew you were going to die in 2 weeks from right now and you had all the money in the world, what would you do at that time? Tick, 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 right? I asked them those questions. I asked what their favorite pizza was, their favorite movies. I did that, and I found so much of the essence of those employees that were unexpressed currently at their job. And then I did an exercise where we sort of looked at how they saw their competition and also where they were now and where they wish they could be in 3 years. I went back to the owner and I said, you have no idea what staff is capable of. And he's like, well, what should we do? Change the name, new logo or something? I said, yes, probably. He said, come up with a name, I'll register it online right now. What you got? What do you got? And he was putting the pressure on, right? He was kind of malicious that way. So I changed the name from Guaranteed Auto Credit to The Key. And the slogan was The Key, cars, loans, life. Now, if you look it up right now, it's nothing like it was when I was working. I'll get it. So I changed everything. I changed their store to look like it was dark and heavy and everything. I opened up the lights and had ficus trees and waterfalls and bright colored furniture, massage chairs, and a multimedia library. See, people who were buying it from used car lots, they're kind of fallen down in life. So we had a library of things to help you with career choices and how to pick better friends and family counseling. And we actually had credit and debt counselors and career counselors, and life coaches on staff available to not only the customers, but to the employees. We had a thing outside. We got an old junker car and put it in a big dog pen cage, chain link. And it said, feel better in 40 whacks or less. Anybody who wanted to could come in there, sign a release, put on a face shield, get a sledgehammer, and wail on that thing. We had employees that needed to do that, customers that needed to do that. The public came and said, well, do we have to buy anything? Oh, my buddy get his video and put it on YouTube. Can I do it? Yeah, sure. Well, the thing was, the one little story I like to tell about this company is one day I was there talking with the head of finance, which means she had the collections department too. The phone rang. Woman came in, she put on speaker. She said, I just lost my job, and I don't think I made my car payment next month. What did I do? And then the woman says, well, where are you, honey? So I'm in your parking lot right now. Well, come on in. So she came in and sat down there. She said, hi, how are you? Oh, you're the guy in the commercial. Because they made me be the spokesperson of the commercial, which is, but it worked. Anyway, so she said, well, what do you do? I said, well, I do blah, blah, blah. Well, we keep a job board here. Did you do this job? Oh, I'd love to do that. I'd be better if I could do that. Yeah. Well, do you have a resume? No. So we made a resume for it. Do you have anything better to wear like that? No. Well, so she made a phone call to one of those places where rich people donate last year's fashions for a tax dodge. Got her a whole new wardrobe. She applied for the job. She didn't miss a payment. They didn't have to repossess the car. That woman's life was changed because of that.
Wow.
That's what I created. Now, first of all, the advertising was kind of interesting. We started on broadcast TV, prime time, with a 3-minute video. And then after the first month, we cut it down to 90 seconds.
And what's the content of the 3 minutes? That's a long time.
Yeah. Well, it's basically a thing where yours truly is walking all around Oklahoma City because it's hilarious. I thought that would be the way because they don't even have pavement sidewalks. Everyone has to drive and have a terrible mass transit system. So I talked about that. I talked about the fact that, what does it feel like, when you're treated like a number, like a credit score or whatever, and you're in a city where the bus can't get you to work on time, and if you don't have a car, and you can't even walk safely on the street and this and that. And eventually I talk about all the things we're going to do for people and what we have. Just keep hammering it home. But here's the result. We launched this. And in 6 months, maybe less, maybe 4.5, but I would just say 6 months, they had churches and social organizations who called and wanted to partner with them. The banks loved what they were doing for the city so much they gave them 0% low interest loans to expand. They went from 1 lot to 4. And when we would go out in public with our special disruptive t-shirts we had and everything, people would come running up to us, crying, screaming, getting pictures taken and telling all their stories. It was fantastic. Only problem is after about 2 years, I resigned the business because of the way the owner really behaved. And a couple of new people he hired who were sort of Machiavellian, and they destroyed the whole vibe of the place. And now they have 1 lot. So the point is, clients, do what I tell you to do, and you'll grow.
And so in that experience, you got them up to 4, you changed the way the community viewed them. What was the key to doing that? Was it the job board and just going that extra mile? Was it the debt, people helping with debt? What, if you had to point to one thing that really changed the fortunes of that company, what would that be?
Well, it was the inspirational idea I had when I was still walking down the mountain, that everything I saw as a fully realized vision I brought to them. But it's as simple as making a decision to do it. Making the decision, we're going to be this.
And committing to it.
You've got to make a decision. And if you don't make the decision to do it, then it is frays at the edges. And everything came to that. And basically, remember what I said. I met with these people and find out who they really were as human beings and let them express that. There were natural huggers there. There were natural salespeople who weren't in sales. There were people who were natural introverts who wanted to do facts and figures, who were trying to sell cars, and we moved them into there. We put everyone where they really needed to be. And what happened was the love that happened between all the people there from different departments became the brand.
Yeah.
The truth of who those people were is what was put out there in the community, and it was fantastic.
So you're talking about not just an advertising. You're or you're not talking about advertising per se. You're talking about a whole culture, lifestyle for the business, if you will, change across the board.
I call it TRS, the total role in society.
Okay, right. So you're both affecting inside the building and outside the building, and bringing,
especially in this day and age. If you look at younger people, especially, it used to be like older people were like, "Hey, I have this. I'm great. I drive this. I live here." But now it's more like, what do I look like supporting a particular brand? So you want to be able to look behind the curtain and see the truth. Well, when you do things that radically bring transparency, and I don't mean transparency is a buzzword, I mean to really see behind the curtain, faith and trust can skyrocket.
Yeah, particularly I would guess in the used car business, because I can't think of I'm trying to think here off the top of my head, maybe anything this side of an attorney that has a lower a lower perception in the public.
Yeah, nowhere to go but up. But see, where some people might say, well, we need to raise the bar a little bit. No, I just obliterated the bar and made it the most interesting company in the city.
Right.
By far.
Yeah. But and
it's all possible.
Right. And it made it the most interesting company while also delivering the service that people wanted. Because you got to have both, obviously, right? You have to, You can be the most entertaining company in the world and be broke.
Right. But see, that's what I mean. It wasn't a mask I applied to a company as a brand. It was taking the truth of who those people were and magnifying. It's like wealth. I don't believe money changes a person. Money magnifies a person. If you're an obsequious old rat and you become a billionaire, you'll become a menace to society.
Yeah.
You know? And so when you empower a brand, the truth of the human beings inside of it, it can only be a success. And so
what's the when do you start that? What's the best sized company? Is it any size company, a new company starting out? You try and have that culture, or is there you need some sort of presence in the community in order to have that approach make a change?
Well, it depends on the business. There are businesses that are sort of retail businesses that have actual locations and a lot of people. then that's critical. Saturday night, I was at a party and I was talking to a young man who has a particularly high-tech sort of business. I'll just leave it at that. And he doesn't have a physical presence, but he has a performance presence. In other words, this is what I say I'm going to do. This is what I say it is, and I say it's going to deliver. Okay. If you have a proposition where you say you're going to do it, and it works, that's great. Now, is that different enough to stand out? You have a message that's true to what you do that can make a compelling marketing message. Sometimes it's that. If you've got a parody product and everyone understands what white gym socks are, everyone understands, what a crossover car that I expect to last me at least 5, 6, 10 years and probably won't have many, breakdowns. They all look the same. It's like, sometimes you have to have a really, really awesome brand to differentiate.
Right.
But still, it's got to be based on truth, or otherwise I won't touch it.
So how did you come to this? What's your background? Tell us about where you grew up, what part of the world you're from, and how did you come to this approach?
Well, I like to use the word background because if you see my background right now, if I just was so conceited that I thought if I dropped dead right now, there would be millions of people who wanted to know who this dude was. Well, if you actually devoured these books behind me, you have a pretty darn good idea. But basically, since first memories, I'd always liked to draw. I've always liked to write. I've always liked to think. I never backed down from an argument. So I've had an obsessive quality in my life. I've obsessively studied people and history and nature and spirituality and science and all sorts of things. One of the beautiful, cool things for me about my business is I've worked with global Fortune 500 brands, ones you really know. In fact, you mentioned almost all of them when I asked you who the big brands were, although Nike I haven't worked with. And what you do is you work with so many different businesses. You learn about so many kinds of industries. Some are quite hilarious and necessary. Like I did work for a monument company, that makes tombstones.
Okay.
And that's kind of interesting. And the funny thing was the guy who owned it had a wicked sense of humor. And for a photo shoot, he made an example tombstone with a name that was actually a comedy name. Anyway, but the point is you get to learn about a lot of different things. So yeah. I'm just constantly hungry for more and the next and the new. As much as I say that digital marketing and precision digital marketing can't make a brand famous the way we're going, I'm still interested in the latest technology and how things are going to go and at what point we will absolutely become robotic creatures with our consciousness uploaded to it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I can tell you how we'll get there. Even things happening right now that are pointing that way. But in other words, I'm always obsessive about what's going on. But the foundation of all that is I realize I'm still a human being dealing with other human beings who like being human beings.
Sure. Let's go back to that upload again. I'm interested to flesh that out a little bit. To me, it seems like I don't doubt that it'll happen at some point, but I don't think that sir, I'm 50 years old. I certainly don't think it'll happen in my lifetime. But flesh that out a little bit. That thought. I
don't know what your life habits are like, how long you're going to live. But the point is, I guarantee you, unless you die soon, it'll happen during your lifetime, but not in your life. Here's how it's going to happen. Cars already will stop for you so you don't run into somebody.
Yeah, right.
They'll parallel park for you. And we're this close to almost saying, oh, thank you, car, with a little haptic gesture saying thank you. Well, technology is something that is going to get friendlier and friendlier and feel more like us. And not many people would say, I want a tiny little chip embedded in the back of my neck. But what if I said you did, and then it talked to your smartphone, and there was an app that could instantly, in about 30 minutes, give you the entire physical, mental feeling of 9 hours of perfect sleep to feel refreshed and energized, how many people would say, oh, I want that?
Yeah.
You know you do. Even
Right.
if you don't want it every day, you'd want it, right? So that's
Sure.
a thing that everybody would want, right? And it's a low risk and it's kind of it works. It's not a problem for most people. But everything's an inverted bell curve, right? To tell the world about it, but those would say, absolutely, I'll be the first. Yeah, sounds great. Oh, I'll wait and see. I'm not so sure. Oh, no, it's going to ruin the human. It's an inverted bell.
Right.
But then, okay, let's do some easy things. I'm going to get a tan. Oh, there's an app for that. Oh, there's the Coppertone app where I can get a full tan for $50 a session, or the essential pay one that's like $1,500 that lasts longer and looks even sexier color or whatever. And change your eye color. I mean, sculpt the body, make you taller or shorter, which will probably make you have to be anesthetized, for a few hours because it might be painful. Those things will all happen. And then you go further into VR and AI. Make it PR, personal reality, where let's say, are you a fan of a particular sport?
Baseball.
Who's your favorite player?
Clayton Kershaw for the Dodgers.
Okay, Kershaw. Wouldn't you like to be him?
Maybe when I was a kid.
No, forget that. Just in your imagination, wouldn't it be cool to be him playing one of his greatest games ever?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
All right, we're going to have that ability because of virtual, almost robotic body. You can sort of download the Kershaw app, and then you can choose to move and play and pitch whatever. Just was he a pitcher, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, pitch just like him during that particular game. That was the most emotional high for you, and move and feel just like him, and soar like him, and have an elbow and a shoulder sore afterwards. But all the pats in the back and the love and hear the cheers. Your consciousness is in the cloud, but you can actually be that body.
So where are you then physically while this is happening, or what's happening to you physically? You're talking about jacking the brain essentially, right? And taking us into...
But see, vernacular. You said, where are you physically?
Yeah.
Are you your body?
No, certainly not. So yeah, where is the physical...
That body is called Jerry.
Yeah.
But how many people would say, hey, body's not coming into work today?
Right. Nobody.
I am not hand, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
I live in the body. All the Phaetons teach that. We're spirit creatures in physical temporary form. So maybe when we achieve that, someone will get visited from outer space and say, you finally transcended those flesh bags. Now we can talk. I mean, who knows? But I think it's logically we're going that way. I mean, I don't care if it's people playing Oculus Rift,
Yeah.
But isn't it interesting? Remember Google Glass?
Sure.
It died because everyone thought it looked like a Dorkamo with glasses on. Everyone knows Google Glass. But everyone seems it's okay to have these giant things doing that,
Right.
That's going to change to something that's just pure retinal. But actually, what's going to be actually funnier, when we were younger, if you saw a person making wild gestures, gesticulating and talking to people who weren't there on the city street, you'd think they were crazy.
Yes.
But we're going to have gestures. Maybe I'll be walking down the street and I'll say to Siri or whoever, and I'll do a gesture like that saying, give me my next 3 meetings. Or say, bum, 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 boom, boom, that says move my second meeting an hour ahead because I've taught it those gestures.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be speaking to it. And if I'm doing that, and there's a couple other 1,000 people on the street all doing that, can you imagine that scene?
Well, I can't imagine that's fun. I can, yes. And it's interesting that you say that because just today when I was driving to work, I had this thought as I was driving in. There was a guy on the side of the road, and he had his smartphone, but he was holding it, out here in front of him, and he was clearly video talking to someone and showing them around him. And I thought, again, I'm 50 years old, so I thought, how strange would I have thought that was 30 years ago, how ubiquitous that has become today, that other than having the experience of there never being cell phones or any of that, because I'm old enough to remember it, this has become ubiquitous. And so people operating, like you said, gesticulating with their hands to move pages around or make phone calls or whatever it is, would quickly be adopted, the same as I didn't think anything about the kid being on the phone walking down the street, other than appreciating how far we've come because I'm, like I said, old enough to remember it.
Even this gesture you just did.
Yeah.
When in human history did people do this?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, I mean, 30 years ago, there'd been something the matter with him 30 years ago if he were doing it. And now it made perfect sense, and everyone's driving by like it's nothing. So I understand.
Maybe we're going to evolve to have longer arms.
Yeah, right. So we can get better selfies, right, without having to hold a stick. I wouldn't put it past nature to start to extend our arms over the next future generations.
Well, again, see, I think as we get more and more and more, even though there's always kind of a resurgence of kind of spiritual, kind of backlash against the externalization of our existence, that increased externalization means that if we live in further and further externalized life, we will gladly shuffle off this temporary physical form to experience life the way we want to.
Yeah, in the digital side.
In physical form, but conscious of it in a purely digital format. Let's say that is consciousness. If my consciousness is not in this body right now, it's like on a wireless external hard drive to my computer or something, right? Okay, Bluetooth, right? My mind is Bluetooth to my body. How weird would that be, and how long would it take? It's like you've ever been really drunk or high. It's not that different, right?
Right.
So
right.
I think we're going there. I look at things that are happening. I draw the line further out, like say autonomous driving cars. Right now, we drive our cars to work, and soon our cars will drive us to it. But when that happens, you realize how many liability insurance policies are going to have to be written to cover those cars? If the car is ever capable of driving me without my control, it's going to have its own liability. Who's going to write those policies?
Yeah, right.
Then the second thing that's going to change is, how long of a commute do you say you have?
About 35 minutes.
Okay. A lot of people in this world have about a 30-minute. At what point, if someone is going to work in an autonomous car that they own, or maybe their employer provides for them, but the employer is going to suddenly say, hey, that's got a full workstation in it, it's got a change of clothes, kind of an instant electronic shower, it's got a bed, it's got whatever. You're not doing anything. Could you work on that report just today on your way in? Suddenly the commute won't be yours anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to change. Whose time is that? So I think just the fact we have autonomous driving cars is going to make a lot of obvious changes, but I haven't heard anyone else talk about those two.
Yeah,
I'm generally pretty right when I predict things.
And I wonder if that's that for me is a little bit harder to swallow, simply because I've had 10,000 employees over my last 20 years, and even speaking for myself and having had these conversations many times. Clearly, you'll remember back in the early aughts where we were all told people wanted to work from home, and working from home, as soon as that connectivity hit, working from home was the greatest thing ever, and it was going to save on so much traffic and blah, blah, blah. And that generation wouldn't work. They didn't want to come into an office and all of that. And that has all but disappeared, because what they found is that people don't work efficiently at home. Many people like to be socialized in order to work efficiently. Many people need to be supervised in order to work efficiently. And so I question the kind of things where work will intrude on what many people consider their time, specifically things like being in the car. I know for me personally, I treasure the time that when I'm not on the phone, but I'm in the car listening to a podcast or whatever it is. So there's going to have to be some give and take, I think, from that perspective, because what we expect people to do and what people will do doesn't always turn out to be the same thing.
Well, but think about it. It's a human nature, isn't it? That, there's a lot of variation in people. That takes so much time. Let's just say everyone works from home. There, right? We're lazy.
Yeah.
It just takes more time to realize that some people are natural introverts who will say, I love working in my home, in my own privacy, and I'll do my best work. And they're the ones who say, no, I've got to have my social buzz, and all on the spectrum, how to really provide all that. It takes more planning and work. Not many people have the energy for that.
Yeah.
It's like racism. It saves a lot of time, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's for sure. Right. So I'm back to the advertising side for a second. I want to. I live in Portland, Oregon, and we were talking about Nike, and so Nike came into being about the time I was born. I've been here my entire life, and so I wouldn't think of wearing anything else but Nike. I would never wear Adidas. I would never wear Reebok. I played a ton of sports growing up. Well into my 30s and early 40s, I played sports. I'm still involved in sports. And so Nike is like, well, that's all I would wear because what else would I wear? How do you get, but I've grown up here. So it's been throughout Nike's growth has been my first pair of real tennis shoes were canvas Nikes. I mean, that's how far back I go with Nike. But I'm since I have you on, how do you engender that sort of following if you are a new business, or how do you start that process? Is it go back to the way you were talking about with the car company, the used car company? Is that to try to grow that sort of brand loyalty? And Nike's never really done anything for me, right? It's just been, I'm from Portland, Oregon, and so are they, and it's always been Nike.
Have they ever inspired you?
I suppose they're average. It's yeah, I would say so. You're talking about like Bo Jackson back in the 80s and just these super athletes and the things they did as somebody who was interested.
The comet's coming, it's going to destroy the earth.
Yeah, right. But at the same time though, lots of people my wife wears Nike and she could care less about sports, so in terms of the advertising, I don't think that stuff gets to her the same way it might have gotten to me or gets to me. And yet, she follows it pretty religiously too. And so does, most everybody else in Portland. So I'm curious if that's possible to, like I said, engender that kind of loyalty without needing 40 years to build it.
Nike has so many customers. You can't just put them in three bins, but let's do it anyway. They're athletes, professional or amateur, people who want to be, or people who are a fan of that. Can all be Nike. In other words, if I like what Nike is about, and I just like sports, I want to be part of that. And if I can be part of that by buying the clothes or the shoes, I'll do it. And if I'm using it as a tool and say I'm going to be like me, Cristiano Ronaldo, or somebody who who epitomizes something I aspire to, whether I'm an athlete or a business person, whatever, it has that ethic, it's to be there. So I think that's how that works for most people. But to answer your question, loyalty. Well, what is loyalty? Can you become instantly loyal? Yeah, if you're an obsessive, instantaneous decision maker, yeah, it's possible. But I think loyalty, you have to do it for the long haul. In other words, that basic human story of a quest, there are 7 basic stories. There's a quest, there's journey and return, there's overcoming the monster, there's rags to riches, there's rebirth and renewal, there's tragedy, and there's comedy. Those are the 7 basic stories. In businesses, you can find business models in each one. Nike, as I've said before, is a quest. Loyalty normally takes time, and loyalty usually takes consistency, because loyalty takes a certain amount of familiarity and a certain amount of expectancy. Loyalty can be proven, it can be a decision. The key, they got a lot of loyalty because when people live paycheck to paycheck, twice a month or monthly, you have a repetition of something that makes you feel good on a regular basis. It's a habit, and that can bring loyalty. But back to that inverted bell curve. Let's see people who will not be loyal to anything ever.
Yeah.
And keep the idea. And then, yeah, pretty much, I'm loyal.
Right.
What you have at both ends of an inverted bell curve is intense energy. I can take someone who loves you Give me a few minutes, I can make them hate you. Give me a hater and give me a little bit more time, I can probably get them to love you. But the people who are sitting on the edge of the fence don't really have any energy to deal with, who knows? So building loyalty to be famous. But see, famous becomes before loyal, probably, right? Because if I don't hear about it, it's kind of hard for me to be loyal to it. What are you famous for? In fact, 2 words, both letter B. B and a B. What do you believe? So how should you behave? You should behave what you believe. Nike's an example of it. I believe that people should move. I believe people should be fit. I believe people should be outdoors. I believe people should push themselves. I believe in teams. I believe in personal. Oh, okay, and that's how we behave. See? A company that tries to be too many things these days has that difficulty. Because, oh gosh, we've heard all our life how many messages we see every day. Well, there is finally hard evidence that because of social media, it's gone up exponentially again. That's why I joked about this time of the year, it's going to be the most exhaustive and repressive, brutal assault on our attention in the next 25, 30 days. But how would you stand out in that? You have to pick something that's true for you so people find out and realize that there's integrity. Something you would die for, something you love, something you have to be, and express it in the most audacious, disruptive, beautiful way possible. And then I'm working with a local client right now, where we're doing something like this, and I told him, be patient, give it at least 3 months. Because when you do something like that, first thing is some people say, oh, they're crazy. Let's see how well this takes on. Let's see if they stay in business. Let's see if they, still there. Wow, they're doing more stuff. Okay, let's check them out. You see, most people are followers, not starters, and they will sit back and just kind of, yeah, okay, I'll like the page or whatever else. And over time, when you do something really wild, if you can show that you can exist and sustain, you've got people.
Can you, do you think you can buy that kind of emotional reaction that, without having to build it? And by that, I mean, when I was a kid, let's say I was in my 20s, that was really when Michael Jordan was at the full height of his powers. And I was a poor kid from the streets, and I wanted a pair of Jordan tennis shoes so badly that I spent $127, which probably before that, the most expensive pair of shoes I'd had was probably $12 or $15 at the local Value Village. But I wanted this pair of Jordans because of who Michael Jordan was. And in a strange way, as a 22 or however old I was, early 20s, I identified through those shoes to Michael Jordan. It made me feel part of the group. And this is, he'd only been in the league for 2 or 3 years. I didn't even like the Chicago Bulls, but I liked Michael Jordan and what he was about. And so, I mean, they had me as soon as they started throwing ads and as soon as his shoes took off. So in a way, Nike's a bad example for me simply because I've been around it for so long. But to somebody from the outside that said, I got to have that pair of Jordans, and all of a sudden they're a Jordan fan, Nike essentially bought that emotional response, and they bought that person through their advertising that included this person that people wanted to be.
Yeah, I think that's pretty close. But let me nuance it, and I mean with truth. If there was no Michael Jordan, there wouldn't be no Air Jordans. No one in the R&D department of Nike would have come up with these shoes and called them Air Jordans. It wouldn't mean anything without Michael Jordan.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
Same exact shoes. If he was never born, would mean nothing.
Yeah.
And if he was born and they didn't make the shoes, people would have liked him as a player and bought probably anything with his name on it, because that's the way human beings are, right?
Yeah, right.
So what they really bought you have to wonder, would Michael Jordan have gone to Brooks or Asics or Reebok or Adidas or whatever the highest bidder is? Who knows? I've never met him. If I meet him, I might ask him.
Yeah.
But the point is, that's a question. Who is being bought and who is being sold there, for real? But I think in that case, you have an opportunity to take, you're already an established company that says we celebrate athletes and we celebrate athleticism, right? And here's a supreme athlete.
Right.
So we want to wear Michael Jordan to say this is who we are.
Yeah.
What we celebrate. So it's a match made in heaven. And thank goodness they had the product, the R&D, partnership with him, and the money to sponsor him that way.
Yeah. And it really developed, it was a relationship that they developed, and you hit it on the head by this supreme athlete, and back to people wanting to be maybe something, that they're not, and how.
Superlative.
Yeah.
A supermodel, a star, a celebrity of any kind. It's even superlative. We're attracted to them.
That's fascinating. Paul, our hour is up. Let me ask you one last question.
Sure.
If you were to do a quick little segment here about yourself, any of my listeners want to reach out to you, what would you say to them? What would somebody come to look for from Paul MacFarlane if they were out shopping?
If you feel a need to change the world by your presence, your company, your business, and you believe in the humanness of our world, and you also agree that the world is full of toxic distractions and overwhelming, superficial complications, I can show you how to dominate, how to win, and how to grow. And I'm fast, and I'm good, and I've got experience. I've worked with the Fortune 500 giant brands like Anheuser-Busch, Apple, Audi, Levi's, Puma, Microsoft, McDonald's, Nissan, the U.S. State Department, Volvo, Smart Car. Probably skip a few. The point is, and you want to find me? My company name, which we'll probably put in some of the posts, or if I get a copy of this, I'll post it too, is the 1101 Experiment. THE1101 experiment.org. You go there and you'll see on the first page everything I've just said.
Okay. And they can reach you at the P. MacFarlane at the 1101experiment.org, correct?
Right. In fact, I'm so fast and I'm so friendly and available. If you go on the site and if you click on the sort of hello bit, you can send an instant email, or if you have your device configured that way, you can tap something and it'll make my phone ring.
Okay. Let me give that one more time just so everybody understands. It's P as in Paul, MacFarlane, MacFarlane, at the THE1101experiment.org. P. MacFarlane at the 1101experiment.org. Paul, I appreciate the time.
It's been a delight, and it's nice to talk to someone who lives in Nike land.
Yeah, I am definitely in Nike land. The hour went quick, my friend. I appreciate your time.
You bet. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Okay. Bye-bye.
I was going to bring up and tell him, too, there's a show that we checked out on Netflix, and this actually came out a couple years ago, but it's called Abstract. And so it's a TV show that follows a bunch of different artists in whatever their artistry is. And so they actually had, what's the guy's name? Tinker Hatfield was the original designer for the Air Jordans and pretty much the designer for the entire Nike Air series or the Jordan series.
Wow.
So that was an awesome episode. It's, half an hour to an hour long, and you get to kind of see this guy's process, see when he started and how it was working with Jordan like that and like designing shoes for him originally.
And it's called Abstract?
Abstract.
Okay.
But yeah, great one.
Cool. Yeah, so everybody check out Abstract. Think I've seen that too. Do they have like episodes, right? And this one was just on
Nike, and they got
Is he like a silver-haired guy?
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a while ago when those came out.
I think I saw that. I think I saw that. Yeah, I did in the early Air Jordans, and
but it's really cool. You get to see some of Nike's backstory too, of like them going out to the track and working with, high school kids and college kids, and doing track runs and figuring out how the shoes deteriorate and what can they do to make a better artist or shoe for the
yeah, they used. There's the story about the he used the waffle maker to make the bottom insert for the shoe. So he poured whatever the compound was inside of a waffle maker and cut the shoe out to put the insert in there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That was interesting. I think that aside from all of the advertising side, your take on uploading your consciousness. You're a techie.
Yeah.
What do you think?
As far as the overall thing, the timeline.
You think? Yeah. Do you think in our lifetime? I mean, to me, that does. I'm 50. My time. Let's say I'm going to live to be the average age. What's that? 78, 80 years old. Whatever the hell it is. Right. Probably by the time I'm 80, it'll be 85 or 90. But let's say I live to be 80 years. That's 30 years from now. Will we be uploading our consciousness?
So I agree with what I think he was trying to get at, is that it will start happening during your lifetime, but it won't become mainstream during your lifetime. And I say that because, I mean, even my small little time within software development, meeting other software developers and techie people in general, there is a pretty large movement of people who want to be augmented. So there are people who make physical modifications to their body to try to make their body closer with technology. And that is like now, right now, there's people.
Like what?
Like you can put chips in your head and your arm and whatever. There's people who differentiate what kind of dietary substances they take to try to make their minds work better and all that kind of stuff. But there's a pretty large movement of people who just try to modify their body to make them perform better, more intelligent, whatever else. And the closer they can get in with technology in those realms, that's where I see a lot of them going. So because you have so many tinkerers, if you want to call them that, I don't know, however you classify that, people actively trying to achieve that in one way or another, I think it's definitely going to be a breakthrough and will be possible in our lifetime. But then, I mean, within engineering classes and everything else, we've always talked about it takes a long time for a person to adjust. The old example was when you would ride an elevator, you'd have a guy sitting in the elevator who would pull the handle to make the elevator go up. You might have had the technology to just put a button on the wall, but for the next 10, 15 years, it still took people time to adjust from having somebody there controlling it and if something goes wrong, they know what to do to fix this elevator, to now, as a whole, we're comfortable just pushing a button and calling for help if we need it. So same with self-driving cars. Even though self-driving cars are beginning to come out, they're never going to be fully autonomous until the general public kind of understands and copes with that.
Well, and I was going to say this on the self-driving cars. From what I read and what I follow, which I'm a car guy, anybody that thinks that we're going to be in self-driving, that there will be a self-driving car at a mass scale in the next 5 years, I think they're fooling themselves. I think we're a decade away before that car. Before you can make a car that will operate day in and day out all by itself. And so if you think about that at let's say it's at least, right? So it's not before 10 years. I mean, and that's just to teach a car how to drive, which the human brain comprehends fairly easily. How in the fuck are you going to replicate the human brain?
So, and that's, the nuances there.
And I'm not saying that they won't.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the enormity of the problem, because they can't do it with cars in any kind of manner, right? In the next decade, let's say. And the brain understands cars simply, right? And is so much more infinitely complicated. I don't know that I see where in any kind of time frame, at least in my life, that'll be something that happens.
Well, two things there. So one, the cars can already drive themselves. I mean, you can.
I'm
if you have
talking
a-
about fully autonomous,
Yeah, and For
self-driving.
example, you have your Tesla parked around the corner, and you can walk outside, click a button, it's gonna back out of its parking
Yep.
spot, come over and get you.
Absolutely.
So it can do that by itself already.
Yep.
Now, before that's on a mass scale, before everybody is using that kind of technology, or we're all used to it, like still, if you're in Portland, if I saw somebody do that, I would be kind of blown off by it. I would be like, there's nobody in that car and it's moving.
Yeah.
You know, even though I know it's physical, it's able to be done, it's already being done, it's still not mass accepted. So and then two, we're not talking about fully replicating a brain in a cloud scenario. I was figuring he was more talking about connecting our brains to a cloud scenario so we can communicate with a cloud using just our brains or whatever.
And downloading the content.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not necessarily replicating a brain in cloud. That's going to be
Yeah, I
way
think you're
far
right.
off.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But
I think I'm thinking of one thing and talking about another.
yeah.
Yeah.
But still, even there, I think that connectivity and all the things that can come from that were relatively close from at least what I know. I mean, you have Elon Musk working on Neuralink, and he has been working on Neuralink for a while, and I'm sure he's pretty close for the technology-wise of it. But same with Teslas. I mean, they've been out for what, 10 years
10
or so?
years at least, yeah.
And it's still not seen very often.
And here's the other part of that too. As I said in the interview, I'm 50 years old. I said that a couple of times. I know I was supposed to be in flying fucking cars in the year 2000, right? If you go back and you look at like Terminator, I think, they came back from 2013, if memory serves, some in the first Terminator. So, what we think at any certain time and what is capable or what's going to happen, nothing came to fruition on any kind of science fiction level the way it was described to us. We're no closer to doing that than we are, flapping our wings and flying to the moon. So there is that. Now, who could have thought of smartphones and all that other shit, right? I'm not saying technology stalled. I'm just saying, using the example of flying cars, that never happened, or the best name of a group I ever saw, of a music group. I was listening to Dennis Miller, and Dennis Miller says he said this, and he went and listened to him over the weekend because of their name, and the name of the group was "We Were Promised Jetpacks." And I thought, that is funny as hell. Yeah, and that's a good example. We were promised fucking jetpacks, right? And now it's almost 2020, and go back and look at any movie made in the 80s, maybe the late 70s and the 80s, and where we're supposed to have been by 2000. Go back to the 50s and look at 2000s, and we weren't that far away from the fucking 50s in the 2000s, or when we hit 2000. So I just mean to say that shit takes a lot longer than
it does
than what we think.
The technology itself, I think, is held back by human perception.
Yeah,
I mean, for
I'd
example,
agree with that.
Like jetpacks. I mean, an actual full working Iron Man suit has been in existence
I've seen
for
it.
over 5 to 10 years.
That thing's fucking cool as shit.
Awesome.
Yes.
But are you going to strap a jet engine to your freaking arm so you can go fly around?
No, but it's not. The other thing, though, is it's not practical.
Yeah.
Right? It's one thing to build a one-off.
Yeah.
Right? And they got those dudes that do
and
the...
it's like millions or billions to be able to build this thing.
The dudes that do the, what is it, the skydiving, but they get the wingsuits.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Well, they attached, I don't know where the fuck this is, Italy or something.
Dubai.
There's a big hole in this mountain that time has kind of sucked this hole out. And so this big mountain, and there's a hole right through the middle of it. That's more of a rock. Maybe you know what I'm talking about. And these two fuckers have jetpacks attached to their wingsuits and literally flew through the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay. How much training does that take? How many years does it take? What's the cost of those jetpacks? How far can you go? What's the practical use of them? Mm-hmm. Right? That's all one-off bullshit. But I it's all one-off stuff, so it's not practical.
Yeah.
They had those. They had the jetpack in the 70s. That I think there was like an Olympics where a dude flew in. It was the. Have you ever seen it? It was white, and
I think so.
and it blew air, if I remember correctly, straight down and held them up. I don't know what kind of fuel it used. But again, it was like in the $6 Million Man, the television show. But so they had that, and you're like, well, fuck, we're on our way. Nothing. That's 40 years ago.
Yep.
Right? Nothing. But I agree with you. The population has to be ready for it too. And when they're not ready for it, it's not going to get quickly adopted, I should say.
I mean, VR, I think, was a perfect example of that. VR has been around and an idea and things that we have been pushing for 40 years or so. Pretty much as long as video games have been around, we have been trying to replicate that kind of VR experience.
Sure.
And still, even now, it's, very flakily coming into
Fortune
popular.
magazine had an article here a couple of months ago, said it's 10 years away.
Yeah.
From being practical.
And you can go down to the store and buy one.
Right.
But still, it's going to take time.
It's still going to take time for mass adoption. Yeah. All right. Jesus, what are we going to do? Our own little podcast here?
I was going to say one more thing on the branding thing. It was really interesting hearing about, although he seems to tend more towards the, not necessarily spiritual side, but, human emotional side and looking at those kinds of things. And psychology is a huge part of branding, especially for big companies. There was a book, and I was trying to find it. I can't find it right now. I'll put it maybe on the website for this. But I read a book all about branding, specifically talking about how do you make those lifelong diehard customers. Like, I buy Nike, and I'm never going to buy anything other than Nike as far as it comes for that. And a big part of it is, conveying to your customer your origin story, how you started, what you believe in, and following true to that. And just seeing how many similarities there were between what this guy was saying and his message versus what I've read in books past, it seems to line up.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, if you could find that book and send it along with that'd be cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that one. That wraps up this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Check us out. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, Google, Reddit, Spotify. Jerry Brazy on all of them. Send us your questions. 2 questions at goodoldjerrybrazy.com. And remember, people, opportunities are everywhere. You got to go get them. Peace.